I am so happy to have Sonia Daniels, who is the lead consultant and the founder of S. Daniels Consulting. We have in common that we both love Louisiana and New Orleans and have had great conversations about that. But more importantly, we've had this really wonderful opportunity this past winter to collaborate and are excited that we will get a chance to do it again through the Tammy Dowley-Blackman Group Truss Institute. And so I love it that Truss sounds like trust, Trust, but it's Truss, and it's this architectural design element of the beams that essentially hold up buildings. And I think about the work that we're embarking on is just that holding up these small to mid-sized nonprofits. I got a chance to speak earlier with team members from the Raven Group. As I said, I've got you here, Sonia, and then later I'll have Brandon Parks from Parks Philanthropy. And I love it that we'll have the group back together again in this new formation. And what we're doing here is really thinking about how to deliver to small and mid-sized nonprofits, knowing that many of them really hold so much of the work up that's happening and that has great impact. And lots of times, though, they have the least amount of resources or limited resources, but are doing again so much of the work. And I love, as I know that you love, that we get to support them individually in our companies, but again, coming together to do it in this collaborative effort. So I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the work specifically that you do. I so appreciate the kind of you do. I know you do strategic planning and you do design and all of these other elements, but very specifically in our collaboration, you're focused in on evaluation. And I know, and you know, so many organizations who want this, wish they had it as an internal element of their team, of their workforce, but again, don't have the resources for it. And so the idea that we would have it as part of this cohort, this learning opportunity, many are excited about that. And so I'd love to first hear how you would actually define or describe evaluation. And then I want to ask you some questions about some of the current work that you're involved in.
Thank you so much, Tammy, for having me here today. Absolutely excited to talk about all the amazing stuff that I do in my work, but specifically, of course, as you mentioned, the opportunity we got to collaborate on. So, to your point, it was focused on evaluation and research, helping organizations figure out how to use the data that they're bringing in from the impact that they're making in the community and really be able to organize it in a way where they not only can understand the full scope of their impact, but also be able to articulate the transformation that folks are experiencing when they interface with those organizations. I like to tell people that I'm a data nerd, and so I love being able to help nonprofits really figure out what tremendous impact that they're making when they can see it on paper, when they can read it out loud, when they can share it in a report. And so I absolutely love being able to help organizations navigate that space.
I love that, a data nerd. We need data nerds because we need to understand, we when I talked to the Raven group, talked to Sunil and I talked to Brad. Of course, Sunil is helping around public policy. You've got Brad helping around strategic communications. And we need to be able to tell the story so we can impact policy, but we need the numbers behind it. We need to understand what the data is telling us so that we can know what the policy should be and then how to tell the story of it. I wonder if you give us a little bit about our current project, a little so we can better understand exactly what evaluation looks like, some of the tools that you might be using.
Yeah. Oh, this is such a relevant question, especially considering a lot of the issues that are happening with our current administration when we talk about how the nonprofit sector is being impacted in terms of funding issues, grants being pulled, and essentially an overhaul of the whole sector. One thing that has been really relevant and top of my mind when I think about the nonprofit sector and the intersection of evaluation, data, and impact is helping organizations understand that right now it is critical that they are able to tell the story of their work to essentially support and corroborate why they need the funding. One of the challenges or one of the gaps that I'm seeing in terms of the decisions being made with our current administration when it comes to the nonprofit sector is there's a lack of consideration around the cost of the services that organizations provide. And then if that funding is being pulled, then who will fill in those gaps and who will fund that, right? And so for me, I've been working with a lot of my clients right now, helping them understand how to pull all of that data, whether it's the numbers, the quantitative data, or it's the narratives and the feedback that they're getting from their clients and program participants, the qualitative data, to be able to package that up in a way that really tells the full story of their work. And if they were no longer to do that work, then who would fill in those gaps? And then ultimately, how much would that cost either the government or businesses to have to fill in those gaps if those organizations were no longer able to do that work? And so that has been really relevant and pertinent work that I've been doing right now with a lot of the organizations that we're working with.
That's really wonderful. I appreciate it. And I know the organizations do because again, so many of them are doing the work. This is not a question about they're doing the work. They're making the impact. But for some, it is just truly difficult for them to know how to tell that story. So many of them are collecting data, some of it at the behest of the philanthropic institutions, some of it because they get federal or state or city funding, but sometimes they don't know how to, connect all the dots in that data. So really glad that you and your team are available to help them do that. I think about, the work I do is focused on as much as it's about helping the institutions, philanthropic, corporate, nonprofit, government. It is also about the leadership, and we're always helping by writing about it, talking about it, and we're helping them to think about what it looks like to design for good leadership and to bring leadership along so leaders can thrive. And we have the good leaders that we need to manage these complex issues. Evaluation has been one of those places where I've always felt like we weren't doing enough to bring leaders along, that we weren't training enough people. And I wondered if you'd speak to the idea that we've got Gen Z entering the workforce. By 2030, Gen Z will be 30% of our workforce. And what would you say about how we would develop leaders who, like you, know how to do evaluation? How do we make for more, data nerds so that we can continue to be able to tell the good stories, the right stories, and so that we can make sure that it's not just nonprofits, but communities benefit. Wonder what you would say to that around how we develop those leaders.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And I love this question because a lot of our work is also shifting into leadership development. As a consulting firm, what we have recognized is that a lot of the projects that we've been working on, although they have been really transformative and impactful projects, there's still an element of folks being resistant to change, which is a challenge when it comes to leadership development. And so as our firm starts to pivot a bit, we are starting to focus on helping leaders get unstuck when it comes to change so that they can really see their projects implemented without any challenges. To your question specifically about the next generation of leaders when it comes to evaluation, is that I think the biggest thing is making evaluation feel a lot less scary than what it really is. I give people this example all the time when we talk about data. So let's say, for example, you have an event and you have 3 out of 4 people come to the event and say that they had an amazing experience. That translates into 75% of your participants love the event, they had a great time, and they were impacted in some way. Evaluation can be that simple if we simplify it for people to understand what it looks like in a practical element or a practical aspect of their work. And so for me, as a data nerd, but also as a consultant, I essentially translate that language for people so that when we're no longer working together, they can still use that in their work in a very simplified way to understand and see what impact they're making on the community.
I really appreciate it because we have to think about leadership in all of its elements. And to your point earlier about helping leaders realize change is here, whether we like it or not. It's always been, whether it's been about this time politically or socially, but it's always been that change was going to happen. And so helping leaders to understand how to do that. We see certainly the change around multi-generational leadership, multi-generational workers in the workplace, in the workforce, and all the change that that's brought. Technology brings the change. When we do their strategic planning, all kinds of ideas come up and require change. So I'm really happy that you all are focusing in on that as well, and also thinking about how do we make data palatable for people? How do we make it, that it feels smaller bite sizes and that doesn't have to feel scary for them? I'm really excited that we're going to get to collaborate in this work and in these learning cohorts building these learning cohorts and providing opportunities for small to mid-sized nonprofits who may think that, well, I don't have a way to do evaluation. I don't have the tools, I don't have the experience, I don't have the funding for it. By doing it in this learning cohort, we can reach more leaders, more people who are working in those nonprofits and those organizations and have greater impact on their community. So I'm really excited about the work that we're going to get to do together. And so thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for taking a few moments to be able to explain the work and just really looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm super excited. I love this type of work. And so I'm so grateful that this opportunity exists.